You're listening to the Wayward Atheist podcast. Hello, everyone. If this is your first time listening, thank you for joining us. This is a podcast where borders collide, where the gloves are off, where filters are removed, where we tell you exactly what we think about the news, politics, and religion. The Wayward Atheist podcast is dedicated to free thought, reason, and the pursuit of truth. You can follow us on Twitter at Wayward Atheist, on Spreaker, Stitcher, and iTunes. You can email us at waywardatheistpodcast@gmail.com or leave us a comment on our Facebook page. So without further ado, let's get on with the show.
This week's episode of The Wayward Atheist has been brought to you by the crafty freethinker. Tired of boring old jewelry and charms? Why not wear a motherfucking T-Rex around your neck? Or a pendant of the Scarlet A? Handmade, secular, and science jewelry from the crafty freethinker gives you a nice alternative to boring old jewelry. Find the crafty freethinker on Etsy and Amazon. Links are in the show notes, or simply Google the crafty freethinker as one word. Hello and welcome to the Wayward Atheist. I'm Dave, aka the Great White North.
I'm Corinne, aka the Yank.
I'm Big Black Gay Dave.
And I'm Ed, the Everyday Atheist.
And tonight we are joined by
Dr. Joe.
And Dr. Joe, you've been brought to us by our dear friend Big Black Gay Dave. Why don't you tell us how you know each other?
Fucking, obviously.
Actually, Dave, why don't you start?
We're like we met online. We met on Facebook. We're both musicians, so we have a lot of common interests. I usually end up sending him some of my stuff, and he gives me some good critiques. We chat a lot, and I don't know. Last time I was in Montreal, we keep kind of missing each other. And when he comes to Toronto, we keep missing each other. But that's how we met.
Did any of this involve you two masturbating over Skype?
Actually, no, we did not. We did not even know. It never went there, really.
That's like my go-to move.
Yeah, I mean,
that's
how every friendship starts, I guess. Well, no.
Oh my God. Poor Edward.
You can ask us all these sort of innuendo jokes after we meet for the first time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if we're talking about internet, cyber sex, then I think that's on the table.
The sexual tension is palatable, right? Palatable? Palpable.
Yeah.
Palpable.
Palatable, like it tastes good in my mouth.
Well, yeah.
Yes.
Or in
Don't
the beard.
dicks taste good? You are gay, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so dicks taste good then, right?
They don't all taste good.
Oh.
No, they don't all taste good.
Clean dicks taste good then, right?
Yes.
Actually,
you can have agreement there.
Once again, I will object. Not all dicks that have recently been washed make me want to go for them.
Well, no, I'm definitely with you, Dr. Joe, because you could have somebody who just doesn't shower for days, and that's nasty. But if, someone just goes to the gym and they have that manly musk going on, then I'm like, whip it out.
But even then, it really I guess it's very dependent on the dick itself, The shower is just a sort of an evolving parameter, like the light of day.
So, Dr. Joe 6969, describe your perfect dick.
Oh, no. Can we start with
yeah. I like this.
I don't want to go there.
Big and black?
Wow.
You are about ready.
Normally I just make Ed freaking embarrassed. Now
Well, let's just say that, being gay is all about liking dick, and it's sort of like, it's sort of there's a natural order of penises, and you bow down to the greater ones, and the lesser ones bow down to you, and sort of, I rarely blow out of reciprocity. I blow as an homage to the penis.
I like that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
What kind of doctor are you?
Oh my God. Okay. So I work as a GP/ER physician.
Ooh, dude, that must be a difficult fucking job.
It's got
as much ER stuff as we do here.
Yeah, well, actually, while we're on the story of peroxide, there was this guy who had this very mild case of allergies. He didn't even try taking Benadryl or anything. He went to this nature therapist, and she told him to give himself a rectal enema of peroxide, which he did undiluted, and he ended up that evening with a colostomy bag.
Oh, that's horrid.
I fucking hate these freaking holistic healers. They should be freaking banned.
Well, I mean, they can give advice, and so long as doesn't constitute illegal practice of medicine, because I mean, telling people to give themselves rectal enemas of anything is sort of a prescription. I mean, unless it's like tea or something.
Yeah, but she's presenting herself as a medical professional by giving advice. By giving medical advice, you're saying that you know that this is going to heal the person when it's actually harmful. Like, I have a severely autistic son, and the big craze in the homeopathy community right now is to stick bleach up autistic kids' ass.
Oh,
right?
okay.
Because they think that autism is a parasite in the gut.
Of course. I mean,
yeah.
And what do they insert it in with a tampon?
I couldn't tell you, because if anybody ever did that in front of me, I'd break their face.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. How could you even think that? And I blame that fucking blonde famous bitch for yapping her mouth off about it causing...
Jenny McCarthy.
Jenny McCarthy.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh,
and people listen to her over doctors.
Of course.
They will listen to her over a goddamn fucking medical scientific researcher who...
I have a quick question. Her and the flat earther got kicked off The View, finally. Because you know that they had the anti-vaxxer and the flat earther on The View, right?
I don't know. I never saw The View.
Oh, it's so exasperating to listen to what's her name, who sounds like Elizabeth something.
Yeah,
she's such a
train
wreck.
The white one, the blonde one there.
Yeah, I mean,
she's like Fox News, right?
She's never going to be worse than Ann Coulter.
Are you talking about Elizabeth Hasselbeck?
Yes.
Okay, so she is the wife of the crappy Hasselbeck. There's Matt Hasselbeck, famous quarterback, mostly played for Seattle. And then there's, I think it's, I can't even remember his name because it's so insignificant.
Did he drive the Knight Rider?
Well, no, Jeff
Hasselhoff, I think.
No, Jeff Hasselbeck, and he rode the bench on the New York Giants to Kerry Collins. Talk about a career. And that's the one she's married to. Okay. So maybe she needed something to do with her time.
Thinking obviously isn't her strong suit.
Dr. Joe, I have a quick question.
Yes.
That gentleman who ended up with a colostomy bag, is that a permanent situation?
No, it's reversible. I think it's until the surgeon wanted the part of the intestine that was sort of burnt to heal before it was reused again. But it depended on the degree of sort of cell death, as you may, like how badly it's going to evolve. Is it going to puncture and everything? Is it going to have to be removed, or will it heal and then everything can be sort of plugged back again?
That's remarkable.
Is that not a litigious situation?
It is. It's a litigious situation in that the person, how do you say, nature therapist or
naturopath?
Naturopath.
Yeah, naturopath or natural homeopath. One of them.
Yeah, it's an illegal practice of medicine.
Mm.
It's like there's also a naturopath that once told a graft patient that he should stop taking his anti-rejection medications. Oh. And that's also like a terrible bit of advice that for people to act upon. And, people are so paranoid about big pharma and the industry. And yes, it's true. The industry is exploiting to a certain degree everybody in the industry. I mean, it's everything that people accuse it of being. Some of it is partially true. But as physicians, we have to do what's in the best interest for our patients. And I have no idea where I'm going with this.
So I'm
okay, because I kind of had something off of that.
So did I. Go ahead.
And I bet we're thinking the same thing. How they talk about how big pharma just wants to make money. So do these fucking supplement companies and homeopathists. They just want to make money.
Yeah, and at least pharma, they pretend. I mean, the pharmaceutical companies themselves won't have necessarily the best studies, but there is a certain thing as looking for evidence-based sort of approaches to things and taking, making decisions based on evidence. I'll give you an example. calamine lotion is written all over sort of books as something that people can do for allergies and bites and everything. But there has never been a single study that's demonstrated the usefulness of calamine lotion in any kind of skin problem.
I knew that was dog shit.
I mean, I've been practicing medicine for 9 years, and I've never had to use calamine.
The only thing it was good for, like, I remember I had all these bug bites, and when you first put it on, it cooled it off, so it stopped the itchiness for a few minutes.
Yeah,
So what I was
But I mean, that was not really helping. It was just, ooh, that feels cool. Yay. Yeah. And then it's gone.
So what I was going to say was the parts that the conspiracy people are attacking are the for-profit part. So in Canada, it would be prescription part, where the actual medical part, that's not a for-profit thing. So they can't accuse you of being this big money doctor, that you're only in it for this, that, and the other. Because if you were really in it for the money, you would be a plastic surgeon down south. You wouldn't have stayed in Canada, where you make, a family doctor with his own practice will make $300,000-$400,000 a year.
Oh my God, I wish.
Well, that's with his own practice, though, right? I'm not talking about, like, I have friends, their dads are doctors, and that's usually what they're making by the end of it. I'm not talking about the ones that work in the hospitals, but in the States, they can't really say that because it's all for profit. All of it is for profit. So the doctors can't even say, we're just doing this for the betterment. Because as you know, working in a single payer system, it's about preventative, and it's about trying to get the best healthcare across with the least amount of the best healthcare across to the citizen with the least amount of cost to the citizen.
Yeah,
that's the cost effectiveness. The idea of it is supposed to be that. I know that shit goes crazy when you add bureaucrats that aren't actual doctors and they start trying to tell hospitals and doctors what to do. I know things can get kerfluffled in that way, but they can't accuse you the same way that they can accuse pharmacies and medical doctors in the U.S. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree. The people are so paranoid about big pharma, but we still have studies on these medications and how they act. When people start taking root of this and this of that, or just basically illicit drugs where we just don't know what we're taking, it's not better. But I mean, they don't have a threshold of doubt for a homeopath or a naturopath. But oh my God, you really have to convince me that I need this, anxiety medication or this high blood pressure pill,
Yeah, let's be skeptical of the guy that went to school for 10 years, and let's not be skeptical about the guy that is really into Chinese culture.
Exactly. And which I don't want to remove any legitimacy from Chinese culture.
No, but Chinese medicine, I will remove legitimacy from that.
Yeah, please do.
Like Chinese culture, I'm not talking about Chinese culture.
No, fair enough. Yes,
I'm talking about Chinese medicine.
Chinese medicine, where they go hunt down almost going extinct tigers for their
gallbladders or whatever,
and
bears for their gallbladders.
The cups. I don't know if you've seen that picture of that guy that got infected from the heat cups on his back, and now he got staph from it, and he's got great big holes in his back, and it's MRSA, so they can't do anything about it, and his back is just slowly getting bigger and bigger holes. Yeah, it's fucking great. Chinese medicine is awesome. And acupuncture is bullshit too.
They come to
It's
Newfoundland.
bullshit. Do you know what? I work, or I used to work, I should say, for an insurance company in their in-house counsel office, and we would do a lot of auto accident cases. So we get a lot of medical records in that we would review, and we had to pay out for chiropractors and some of the weird stuff, like an acupuncturist would get weighed into our damages analysis, money the insurance company would pay off. I'm like, but chiropractic doesn't help this or whatever injury it is. And they just...
My healthcare plan at work covers chiropractic or chiropractor, whatever you call it. I'm in disbelief.
It's a sham.
It sort of is. I think if there's one thing that I recommend to all my patients, and some people may find this surprising as an overweight sort of male, but it's yoga. I think yoga is the best thing ever for so many reasons.
without the, what do they call that? The homes, without
the spirituality.
Bullshit.
There's a balance between the spiritual, the respiration, and the positions. It's a whole balanced practice. There shouldn't never be too much of the Om, because it takes away from the physical exploration of yoga. But I was actually thinking of starting out a project where I sort of prescribe what I want the yoga teacher to work on with the person based on their symptoms, whether it's somebody who has their shoulder blades all hunched because of working at a desk that's not adapted and them needing to sort of work on their posterior muscles, or people with anxiety who need to sort of, really connect with themselves. There's so many reasons to do yoga.
What is the current scientific research regarding yoga and that kind of?
I obviously have not reviewed the literature on this subject. However, I do remember having read one study, and it was on postmenopausal women that were doing yoga, and they were comparing basically a group of postmenopausal women doing yoga and a postmenopausal women not doing yoga. And what they found out is that the postmenopausal women that were doing yoga, first of all, they didn't gain weight that the others gained because their basal metabolism rate stayed high, and they had a lot less musculoskeletal issues.
Yeah, because they're exercising.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so it could be said of any real exercise, even if it's, like if you do the P90X stretching, it's not like, just stretching. It's pretty, you're definitely working your muscles. And so, is the correlation more about, if you do push-ups, your muscles are going to be better than somebody who doesn't. So
there's something about yoga that makes it sort of low impact. And there's something about yoga where you're going towards bodily self-awareness, which is not necessarily the case, for instance, in a discipline like tennis. Tennis is a discipline of high bursts of energy, changes of direction. It puts your musculoskeletal system at risk. Whereas yoga, it organizes and balances things out. So in that sense, it is different than a sports discipline that comes with sort of risks.
I wasn't referring to a sports discipline. I'm just referring to any type of low impact exercise.
If you compare them, let's say, for instance, somebody does only brisk walking. That's great for the heart. It's great for most of the muscles and the joints. However, when you work your joints to ranges that you don't reach in your everyday life, for instance, when you try to put your shoulders behind your head, or things that you're working towards as flexibility and things like that, can really sort of balance out the postures that we take doing everyday things. That sort of,
but like CrossFit claims to do the same thing. But what I'm getting at is, I'm not trying to compare it to walking, but they have very light aerobic exercises where you use light weights, which are working muscles. I kind of want to know what about yoga, and I want to know the research behind what makes yoga better than anything else for that.
Well, it's not necessarily better. I think for people that have these basic complaints of sort of issues that are chronic and postural, this can increase your potential to just have a painless sort of everyday life, and it'll help you with other disciplines. But let's say if you talk about CrossFit and yoga could not be more diametrically opposed.
Well, no, I was just saying
it's interesting that you mentioned
that they're making that claim.
No, of course.
I just feel like maybe I'm phrasing my question wrong.
No, but it's fine. It's an interesting comparison that you're making, or drawing a parallel, or trying to see what the differences are, because CrossFit is ultimately an elite sport. What percentage of... I can't even do a CrossFit class. I weigh 250 pounds. I
used to do CrossFit when I weighed a lot less before I had a back injury.
So, it's an elitist sport. You can't just tell a 40-year-old
I was an elite athlete. I was I was still a pudgy, 30.
There's competition. There's CrossFit competition too, though, Corinne. So there is an elite side to it. Yeah.
But I guess I'm just not, I guess what I'm just asking is the specific research regarding yoga and use it, because you said you prescribe it. So to me, that indicates that
That's not what he said. He said he would like to prescribe it. He doesn't
But
already.
based on what? Like based on I don't know. I'm a scientist. I worked as an astrophysicist, and I'm going back to school for environmental geology. So I just like to see the research behind it. I'm not trying to hound you or interrogate.
Oh, no, that's fine. I mean, I think that the study that I had already read, I think sort of makes part of the point of at least being useful. But you're right that it doesn't necessarily compare it, to other disciplines transversely. And I think by the next time that we sort of do this, I may have looked it up a bit and, gotten a more sort of compelling scientific and evidence-based approach answer to this question that's very legitimate.
I think any form of exercise is really good,
Yes.
So like if you have people that are middle age or menopause and maybe live a sedentary lifestyle, I think any form of exercise is going to help them. It doesn't necessarily have to be yoga, and my dog is setting off my child's toys. Sorry about that, guys. I think part of the problem that Corinne is having with the yoga is that there is a lot of woo that comes with it, right? Mm-hmm. So I think like the reason why she's asking, and I'm totally speaking for her, but is like, what side of yoga are you finding beneficial? Are you thinking that the spiritualist side and the exercise side is having some kind of benefit to the people, or if it's just straight exercise? And if it's just straight exercise, why would you not just recommend them join a different type of exercise instead of something that is so attached to woo?
What I meant was I see what Dave is asking, but sorry, Master, but I think something differently. I was thinking more of, I would like to see the peer-reviewed research behind those claims. And I'm hoping that by the time next time we talk to you, maybe there'll be some.
Yes, and it's actually good because I never sort of interrogate the medical literature at all. So it's like, I'm going to go back on PubMed and start using search words. And so
That's your homework.
Yes. Done. Deal.
Okay,
awesome.
so we'll jump into David's interview of Dr. Joe 6969.
69. 69.
Yeah, so like, I guess, what kind of religious upbringing did you grow up in, Dr. Joe?
Okay, well, so I'm Christian Lebanese. I was born in Montreal, but my parents were Christian Lebanese, are still Christian Lebanese. We were raised Roman Catholic. I was baptized at, I think, a few months. I had a lavish first communion at 7 years old. And we used to, when we were younger, we used to go to a church every Sunday, and it was more something ritualistic and social in my head. It was never really, my parents are mild Catholics. They're not as intense as Catholics can be, and they're not intense as intense as Arabs can be also. I used to go to Sunday school, but Sunday school was more about learning the Arabic language. And yes, I did have religious, sort of classes in the French private school that I went to, but it was a really, really secular education. So even in the religious studies, we talked about euthanasia and abortion and everything. And my religion teacher was like a pro-union chain-smoking lesbian. So there was a limit to how much she would want to brainwash us. And, so religion was a part of my upbringing, and it was also very much part of, a lot of expressions that you use in everyday life, like thank God, God forbid, things like that. So, that was sort of part of my life, but the spiritual aspect was very early on sort of not for me.
Mm-hmm. And what was your deconversion process like? How long have you been an atheist?
Well, I think that I was what I consider a functional atheist by the time I was 5 years old. I think that I didn't learn the word atheist until probably 10 years after that. So then I could sort of think back about my process. But I remember that my mother used to use sort of the wrath of Jesus as a way to sort of want to discipline me. And yeah, she used to say that when I would misbehave. I was the oldest of two guys, and I was, all over the place. And she would tell me, if you misbehave, Jesus will strangulate you in your sleep.
What?
Yes, I'm not kidding. And the thing is, yes, at first it's sort of scary. And that first night where you hear that, you're like, okay, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna see him and I'm gonna prevent him from doing that. But then what happens is that it doesn't happen. And then I continue misbehaving and the threat comes back. And then I hear about being strangulated in my sleep and I'm, yes, mother, thank you. And then, by the sort of, I guess 4 days later, it's like, this guy's a hack. Like, what the fuck? I was 5 years old and I knew Jesus was a joke.
So I'm kind of similar. At 8, I knew it was fucking bullshit, but I was doing I do renovations for a living. So I was working for this older Lebanese couple and they took care of their grandchild during the day. And every time this 2-3-year-old child walked past the photo of Jesus, the grandmother would make him stop, look up and say, I love you, Jesus. Now, after he said, I love you, Jesus, he walked by his grandpa's photo. He walked by his mom's photo. He walked by his dad's photo, her photo. No stop and I love you to his family. Stop, I love you to Jesus.
Wow. So as you know, Joe, you're gay, you're of Lebanese descent, and you're an atheist. Have you encountered any kind of pushback or discrimination over the course of your life?
That's a good question. I'd say that, yes, I can talk about being sort of like a lanky, effeminate sort of teenager who was a nerd and was, socially awkward and didn't have many friends and was mildly bullied because I was never really sort of physically or sort of, it was an issue, but it wasn't sort of, I've heard stories that were way worse, but, that is not as much of a specific story as, something that happened to me 3 weeks ago, which was actually very, very strange and weird, especially in the context in which it's happening. So as I mentioned, I personally practice yoga, and as a sort of a non sort of yoga body type, I have my teacher come to my house and we do sort of a session one-on-one, and I've been doing this for like over 8 years.
I'm sure you do.
And it was, oh yeah, there's my yoga teacher is a friend and there's absolutely nothing sexual between us. Just
tell that to your friends, not to us.
Whatever. Anyways, so we decided to have an outdoor class. I rent a house and I live across from sort of a park, and the park is adjacent to a school. And so it was the afternoon, I think it was Thursday, before classes were over, and we were doing yoga and obviously not really bothering anybody. Me, 5'9", 250 pounds, bearded, hairy, and my yoga teacher, who's more like a sort of an Anglo-Saxon, thin, lanky, sort of triathlon aspiring guy. And so we're doing the class, and then at one point the kids start coming out and they're playing soccer and whatever. And so there's a young black child who's most probably Haitian, who started sort of walking around us in a weird sort of way and calling us sort of the equivalent of the F word. But in Haitian Creole. And so I sort of knew this because I have Haitian friends.
You mean fuck?
No,
you can say
the equivalent of the same faggot.
Okay, yeah, you can say that.
You can say whatever you want on here.
No, I know. It's just even saying it is uncomfortable. So he was sort of, sort of doing these sort of incantations where he was singing it to a sort of a melody, and it was weird because I was there sort of trying to drown out the hate in my yoga position, and my yoga teacher was completely oblivious to the fact because he didn't understand the language in question. And so then at one point he sort of came behind us and almost sort of intentionally kicked the ball above our heads and sort of tried to get us to react, but obviously we did not. It was sort of like,
how old was this child?
12 years old.
Holy shit.
Yeah, and I'm thinking, is this really happening? Like, it was the first time in over 15 years that I'd felt any kind of painful sort of discrimination. And of course, I mean, it's begging for it's so ironic when you think about it, an oppressed group sort of oppressing another one. It's like, the fact is, he didn't even know if we were gay or not. He was just sort of assuming that we were gay because we were sort of two men doing yoga. And that's probably what he was taught to think in such a situation. Mm-hmm. It was sort of freaky because when I came back to my house, I told him, and then he was outraged. And we were it was strange. We didn't really know it's sort of like we had been in the same sort of hold up, and it was uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And then I thought about how would I have reacted? What would have been another way to react than to not do anything? Because, I mean, don't forget, we're talking about a 36-year-old male versus a 12-year-old child. You know, it's not like you can sort of just walk up to him and yell at him. That could be perceived as harassment by other people, outsiders or whatever. I thought of complaining to the director of the school or to the person that was responsible for the child at this time, since he was part of a school activity. Mm-hmm. And then I just thought of how dramatic it would get and how the parents would possibly take the defense of their child, and that it wouldn't really change anything. I was sort of I had a very weird negative outlook on the whole thing, and I couldn't believe that I was actually going through this as a professional in my 30s in Montreal, an open-minded city. It was pretty freaky. And I mean, I tell this story because I have no stories of sort of discrimination at a younger age. Mm-hmm. I always sort of managed to be in places where being gay was sort of okay. Mm-hmm. The only time where I would say that wasn't the case was when I was in Beirut. But ironically, Beirut was a very liberal city, even when I went there in the year 2000. And the funniest thing there was when two of the people that I had met there told me about how they were arrested and put in prison for one night because somebody saw that through the hotel room they were having sex, and then they called the army, and the army arrested them, and they spent the night in jail. And then one of them was a medical student. He told me how he convinced the guards to give him a bottle of rubbing alcohol, and he got everybody drunk on that. That was funny.
Wow.
So even that story of the oppression of homosexuals in Beirut was sort of like softcore and funny. So wow. I can't say that apart from this sort of isolated event with the child 3 weeks ago that I've ever really had a significant amount of discrimination addressed at me. I don't know how to say this.
I hear Lebanese food is really good. So I'm in a pretty much a monoculture here in Newfoundland. So, is there anything, culturally speaking, that is unique to Lebanese culture?
You mean culinarily speaking?
Not just culinarily, but I mean, I just used that as an example, but that is distinctive, that makes up your culture, that would be, I'm trying to phrase this properly.
In Ontario, they sell pizza.
No, I mean, like.
What's special about Lebanese is what you're asking me, basically.
Yeah, like,
what
because
are you known for? What
it's delicious.
That's
awesome about it.
Being a person in a monoculture, meaning that everybody's usually the same. And as a social cultural anthropologist, one of the things that I really like is studying culture. What makes people unique, and what is something that you guys can say that is important to you culturally.
Okay, well, first of all, I have to also just remind, or maybe say for the first time, that I was born in Montreal. So Lebanese is basically my upbringing and my origins, but I've never lived in Lebanon. Yeah. And when I go there, I don't necessarily have a feeling of belonging. I mean, I get a sense of this is where my roots are and everything. And then I sort of thank God, ironically, I thank God that my parents immigrated to Canada. But I would say, the Lebanese people are known for sort of wanting to be considered a sort of a special part of the Middle East, a part where, there's a lot of Christians. So it's sort of like Italy and Greece, it's not too Muslim. It's sort of there's also there's a very shallow, Lebanese people are known to be very, very shallow, to dissociate between the horrors of war and the superficiality of getting nose jobs for their daughters and facelifts and injections and bikinis, and just basically the coexistence, and I wouldn't really say peaceful, the tense coexistence between several factions of Christians, several factions of Muslims, and their social sort of characteristics. You'll see on the same day sort of a woman in a full body burqa, and you'll see like another girl in a G-string that's like literally almost naked on the beach. And those things sort of try to coexist there. But it's a place that's actually quite strange, like when you go there, because people live their lives on different levels. I mean, they party and they eat well and they drive nice cars and buy expensive clothes, yet they don't have basic civil rights, and they don't have a public health or public transportation system. And I mean, it's still a developing country. It's got a lot of it's got this sort of identity weirdness where people, it's sort of, I feel like sometimes Lebanese patriotism is sort of an empty vessel, sort of like the love of hockey. Excuse any sort of hockey lovers. It's something that's just like,
okay,
it's a
interview over. Interview.
You're on with Canadians and you insult hockey?
No, he's a Canadian too, so.
I don't know. Anyways, I don't know anything about hockey. All I know is that the whole sort of liking the sport is one thing, but sort of rooting for your team because they come from your city is something that I find, like, I think Oscar Wilde said that patriotism was vulgar. Mm-hmm. And I never understood hockey. Like, I watch a hockey match on television and I don't understand what I should be looking at.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, just the skill of the players alone is amazing. You're flying on the ice on these blades and you have to keep track of this small puck.
Honey, I just want the locker room footage.
That's what got me into hockey too, is the hockey players.
That's the icing on the cake.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen that footage.
How old is the country of Lebanon?
Oh my God. Let me Wikipedia that while we speak.
So it's got to be like 2,500 years old.
No, not the country of Lebanon.
1,200.
No, it's Lebanon independence. I think it was in the 20th century because don't forget we were protectorate of France.
Yeah, I think it's only like 80 years old. If
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
1943.
And what was it before that?
Well, it was like a French protectorate.
Okay.
A French mandate.
Yeah, because you said developing nation, and I was like, fucking countries over there are pretty damn old.
What about like when you told your parents that you were gay? How did they take that, being Christian?
Okay, well, it was sort of weird because my mother had this sort of profound sort of breakdown. My father was sort of in denial, and he sort of accused it of being a phase and things like that. And honestly, it sort of just went away. We sort of don't talk about it. And it's strange because, I mean, I've been single for the longest time. And so I have really nothing to say to my parents about my sexuality. I mean, I wish I could sort of have an amazing boyfriend and present them or whatever. I mean, they see my friends, they meet the people that are important.
David's a really good guy.
Oh, yes, I know. But so since I have nobody in my life, I'm not going to present them to anybody. So basically it's sort of a non-issue. And so that's sort of how we navigated through that. The phase where my mom found out was pretty rough. It was very hard.
You're a goddamn doctor.
Yeah, but it's sort of like that wasn't enough. I had to be sort of the doctor that got married to the beautiful woman and had 3 kids.
Yeah, but you could be the straight criminal.
Of course, but whatever. I mean, it's hard. It's hard for me to not understand where she was coming from, knowing who she is. But it was sort of like it was hard for her, but it was also hard for me. So sort of like, let's each deal with this the way that we can.
But I mean, you haven't lost your parents too.
No. I mean, I see my parents, once, twice a week. We eat together. My mom, sometimes even brings me food, like whatever, if I'm busy or something, and she brings over leftovers, and we have a great relationship. We have a great relationship in comparison to what it was before. I think that Middle Eastern parents or maybe Mediterranean parents have a way of being sort of overbearing and sort of tyrannical, and sort of they have this standardized vision of their child, but they don't actually sort of, at one point I told my parents, you got to stop buying me and my brother the same fucking stuff for Christmas. We are not the same person. and it's after that they were like, oh, right, Joseph likes classical music. Oliver likes hockey. Joseph has dogs. Oliver has cats. You know what I mean? Like, let's try to individualize our vision of our children. And my parents are not as bad as the Arab parents can be. Like, I really consider myself lucky from that perspective. But there was still that sort of Mediterranean overbearingness that you'd see in My Big Fat Greek Wedding, but the Lebanese version. Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll jump into the first news story.
In this week's Big Gay World, we have stories from Mississippi, the Czech Republic, the Pentagon, and some perspective from a gay Mormon. Our first story is from Jackson, Mississippi, in the Associated Press. A federal judge has ruled that Mississippi clerks cannot cite their own religious beliefs to recuse themselves from issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples. These powers of recusal stemmed from Mississippi House Bill 1523. However, late in the night on June 30th, minutes before the bill was to take effect at its midnight deadline, U.S. District Judge Carlton Reeves issued an injunction blocking the entire bill, which would have allowed private citizens and some public officials professing a sincere religious belief to deny services to gays and lesbians. The bill was widely considered one of the most sweeping attempts by a state to undermine the Supreme Court's 2015 decision to legalize same-sex marriage, attacking the First and 14th Amendments. Mississippi Governor Phil Bryant expressed his disappointment in the ruling and said he expects an aggressive appeal, indicating that House Bill 1523 is to provide religious accommodations granted by many other states and federal law. According to the Washington Post, legislative attempts to curb the rapid expansion of gay rights have spiked sharply over the past few years, with almost 200 bills seen as discriminatory introduced in nearly 36 states, according to the Human Rights Campaign. After the Windsor ruling, the implementation of religious freedom laws, just like anti-trans bathroom laws, are a tactic by the religious right, who have been losing the legal battle as of late. Religious freedom is a euphemism for religious freedom to discriminate against LGBT people. The scary part of these RFRA laws come in the form of the extra, nearly ironclad protections, known as strict scrutiny, for religious practitioners. Let's switch gears to the Czech Republic with a story from Gay Star News. In a ruling in late June, the Czech Constitutional Court lifted a ban that prevented same-sex partners from adopting. The court made its decision after a lawsuit was filed by a gay man in a partnership. According to the previous law, a single gay man who qualified for adoption would be denied adoption rights once he entered into a registered partnership. This new ruling is a big step forward for LGBTI rights in the Czech Republic, but it isn't perfect. What this new ruling means is that while individuals in registered partnerships would be allowed to adopt a child, joint adoption still isn't allowed. Only one partner would be the legal guardian. Maria von Kannel, president of the board of a European LGBT family advocacy group, welcomed the ruling but said, quote, Czech authorities should go much further and allow registered partners to apply for adoption jointly. Only then will all legal discrimination concerning adoption be erased. End quote. Back to the United States, where there is good news for transgender members of the military. This is U.S. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter.
Our mission is to defend this country, and we don't want barriers unrelated to a person's qualification to serve preventing us from recruiting or retaining the soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine who can best accomplish the mission. We have to have access to 100% of America's population for our all-volunteer force to be able to recruit from among them the most highly qualified and to retain them. The reality is that we have transgender service members serving in uniform today, and I have a responsibility to them and to their commanders to provide them both with clearer and more consistent guidance than is provided by current policies. I'm announcing today that we're ending the ban on transgender Americans in the United States military. Effective immediately, transgender Americans may serve openly, and they can no longer be discharged or otherwise separated from the military just for being transgender. Additionally, I have directed that the gender identity of an otherwise qualified individual will not bar them from military service or from any accession program. In taking these steps, we're eliminating policies that can result in transgender members being treated differently from their peers based solely upon their gender identity rather than upon their ability to serve. And we're confirming that going forward, we will apply the same general principles, standards, and procedures to transgender service members as we do to all service members.
According to theadvocate.com, Secretary Carter pointed to a study the Pentagon commissioned from the RAND Corp that determined there are between 1,320 and 6,630 transgender Americans currently serving in the armed forces, whether on active duty or in the reserves, out of an estimated 1.3 million service members nationwide. Check out the show notes for a link to a full write-up by Sunnivi Breedham at theadvocate.com. The article touches on questions like access for trans members to gender-affirming surgery, access to other medical services, performance standards, and reactions from various trans advocacy groups. This is a special shout out to the city of Steinbach, Manitoba, where thousands gathered for the inaugural Pride Parade celebrations this weekend. Let's turn now to a more serious note. Last week we had some great discussion on the LDS LGBT issues with Bryce Blankenagel. Tyler Glenn, an openly gay ex-Mormon and lead singer of the musical group Neon Trees, blasts the LDS Church in a powerful Facebook video, where he argues that LDS policies have led to the suicides of many young LGBT people.
This is Stockton. This is Wyatt. These two teenage boys have something in common. They're both gay, they're both Mormon, and in the last week, they both committed suicide. I want you to say their names. In the last week, it has been reported that 3 other teenage LDS and LGBTQ teenagers took their own life. Since November, we've heard of over 40 suicides within the Mormon LGBTQ world. Some find it hard to believe or exaggerated, but I make this live video right now to help you put a face to this policy that bans same-sex couples and their kids, to see that this is actually happening, and it's real, and it's right now. My name is Tyler Glenn. I'm a singer in a band, and I make my own music. I am gay, I'm 32, and I struggle weekly to find my place in this world because for so long, I struggled to find my place in God's plan. Dear Russell Nelson, you spearheaded this policy in November, and you and your colleagues claim to speak directly to and for God as his mouthpieces on this earth today. You have yet to respond to the confusion, chaos, and disruption that you have caused so many current and former members of your church, both queer and straight alike. You've had months and a public conference, satellite broadcasted to the world in April, and you have yet to give light to the actual darkness that so many of your members are living in currently. Russell Nelson, and for that matter, the leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you claim that this policy is of God. I came to know God through your church. I served a mission, and I converted people to this plan. This plan has no space for me. This plan is flawed. There is either no God, or God isn't speaking to you. Maybe it's both, but you have a responsibility to speak to us. Since you speak to him and claim that he gives you revelation, I beg of you and plead with you to change this doctrine. This should be the biggest concern. Your church is literally bleeding. Russell Nelson and the leaders of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there is blood of your members on your hands. Please don't let this be a summer of more gay suicides. Please make a space for your gay members. Please tell them they are okay and they are made in the image of God and they are not flawed. Please stop telling them that they are abnormal. Please, please, please. How many more? How many more? I want you to look one more time at the picture of these 2 young men. And I want you to ask yourself, how many more?
Last week we talked about power. We talked about the power that leaders of a church have over their congregation. As atheists, outsiders to religion, we were disillusioned, puzzled by the reality of this kind of power. How could this be? Who are these people to tell other human beings how to live their lives? It's stories like this that make this concept of power and control very real. These stories shine a light on the disastrous results of harmful dogma from people who claim to be able to speak to God. I'm glad that Tyler is using his voice to speak out in a powerful and personal way. Personally, my gut reaction is to tell these old, out-of-touch assholes in the LDS church to go fuck themselves. But that's just a reaction of anger. I think a more productive gesture might be to appeal to any of our listeners that might be LDS and LGBT and struggling, so I can point them to a centralized resource for help. Please check out mormonspectrum.org/LGBTQ. Links are in the show notes. Here you can find links to the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, the Trevor Project, the Trans Lifeline, as well as links to other support resources. That's been your Big Gay World for this week.
It is much more than you ever imagined.
A Noah's Ark, smack in the middle of rural Williamstown, Kentucky.
The Ark is biblical in size, and I mean that literally.
510 feet long, 85 feet wide, 8 stories high. Inside, seriously, it is awe-inspiring.
Tell me where we're sitting.
Actually, we're sitting in the roof deck of Noah's Ark. This is the most authentic recreation of a Noah's Ark in the world.
Ken Ham runs a Christian ministry dedicated to spreading creationism, a literal interpretation of the book of Genesis. He believes God created the earth in 6 days and 6 nights and rejects scientific evidence that the earth is 4.5 billion years old.
So, taking God at his word in Genesis, dinosaurs lived beside people about 6,000 years ago.
Is it an evangelical tool, the Ark?
Oh, yes, it's definitely an evangelical tool.
Like Disney World, Ark Encounter is a for-profit park, except for its religious purpose.
We didn't build this to be just entertainment like Disney. We built it for a religious purpose. Otherwise, we wouldn't have built it.
The state of Kentucky is on board, ready to fork over $18 million in sales tax incentives for a little economic salvation.
I think it's going to bring business into the town. How could that not be the perfect solution for rebuilding our community?
Kentuckians eager for work have applied to work at Ark Encounter, but there's a catch. Ark employees must sign a statement of faith, disavowing same-sex marriage, premarital sex, and adultery. They must also believe in Genesis and Jesus Christ.
So Jewish people know?
If people have put their faith and trust in the Lord Jesus Christ, they...
Muslim people?
Well, if they're Muslims, they certainly don't believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God.
We have about 600 members.
So you're a pastor and you're a taxpayer?
Yes, on both counts.
What do you think of Ken Ham's Ark project?
I believe as a Baptist in the separation of church and state, and I don't think that the state ought to be involved in promoting any particular religious views. There are kinds of laws called Sharia, where people have used legislation and the government to promote a religious faith. And I think we, as Christians, need to be careful that we continue to be Christian, and to be Christian in the context of the United States.
That doesn't bother Kentucky's new Republican governor, Matt Bevin, who says his administration doesn't discriminate against any worthy economic project. Ham is predicting up to 2 million visitors a year, and that would certainly answer some of Williamstown's prayers.
The Ark Encounter is now officially open in northern Kentucky.
The park in Williamstown features a life-size replica of Noah's Ark, and it's expected to bring at least a couple of millions of visitors in each year. WKYT's Mark Barber is live in Grant County with reaction from supporters and critics. That is our top story at noon. Mark?
Afternoon, Bill. Visitors aren't just filing in 2 by 2. They are flooding in by the thousands to see this massive ark that is 7 stories tall and nearly 2 football fields long. It is a life-size replica of Noah's Ark, built following the same measurements in Genesis 6. The religious theme park is expected to draw up to 2 million visitors in its first year. Crowds started lining up early this morning to weave their way through the gargantuan attraction that was built to teach a biblical worldview. The Ark is also drawing in protesters who are lining the exit ramp on I-75. The critics do not think the $100 million religious theme park should be receiving $18 million in tax breaks because they say it celebrates fiction, not fact. Others, however, disagree.
I would encourage them to come and see for themselves, because there's 125,000 square feet of exhibits on 3 decks. And the top deck is teaching exhibits. And it does outline, it's not just faith. There is facts based on scientific evidence.
This park tells people that evolution is not true. Science isn't true. The Earth is only 6,000 years old. This is ridiculous. They're raising a bunch of scientifically illiterate children, and this is a dangerous concept.
But a concept all the same that is drawing in people from all over the country and even all over the world to see this massive ark in a small Kentucky town. Just a couple minutes ago, we spoke with a boy who said his family made a 3-day trip from Canada to be here today. Live in Williamstown, Mark Barber, WKYT.
I don't know any Canadians that would drive down there. They must be from Saskatchewan. Like there's no other choice. Like it's the Bible Belt, right? So I was the one that wanted to talk about this because I kind of watched a little tour that an LA reporter did into there, and the motherfuckers had Noah having pet dinosaurs, and these dinosaurs were like laying down in cages like a dog would lay down in a kennel all nicely. And the reason why it bothers me so much is that it's the tax payers' money that went into it. And then on top of that, he has made employees sign chastity waivers.
And you have to be against gay marriage. You also have to be against, I think, adultery. You have to be chaste. It's a lot of crap.
Was there you have to be Christian? Was that part of it too? Like just the religious confession? Yeah.
You can't be Jewish. You can't be Islamic. You have to be Christian.
Which in a country that is supposed to have separation, or is like the only country that has like a clear definition of separation of church and state, it's insane that the government would, but that's a thing in the U.S. It's like they really let states kind of do their own thing these days, right?
Well, it's the governor of Kentucky that is giving them $18 million in tax exemptions that is making this a viable option for them as a theme park.
And you look at the logistics of this too. It's just, and it's shameful because people will go into this theme park and not realize that there's like life safety devices. Like there's fire alarms and smoke detectors and, like some person in the ancient days who's been on a completely flooded earth for 40 days, right? Like
1 year.
1 year. Was it 1 year?
I thought it was 40 days and 40 nights.
That's only when the rain came down.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Wow. Good insight. But, just the amount of resources and nuances needed to survive this trip, and then people can go into this and not think about that. They're not thinking about that, how improbable.
Let's see this bitch float, David.
Well, okay, that is one point that I wanted to bring up. So that is my wet dream, right? Like as a carpenter, that would be like, I would love to work on that thing. I would love to have worked on it, but it's a
beautiful, like, look at the shapes and all that.
Yes,
I mean, like,
and it's made of wood, and it's kind of what I do, right? So like, I would have really liked to have
played with wood.
I do play with wood. No, I would have liked to have worked on it, but the fact of the matter is that he says that it's going to give evidence to the biblical story. So my question to the three of you is, how is a vessel that is unseaworthy and has plastic statues of dinosaurs going to give evidence to the biblical story?
I think what they mean, it's not going to, first of all, that's to answer your question. I think what they're saying is, I think they're cheating. They're using the sensory experience as a cheat to evidence. When your senses are overloaded and you have the visual, the smells, the sounds, people seem to think that's what I think what they're playing towards.
They're also using Ken Ham's cockeyed doctrine, right? It's scientific. You don't know that kind of tree of life type shit that is wrong, that,
I don't even think they even need that though. I think they're into this witty smelling place with animal sounds and thing. That's what he's trying to hope to do. He's trying to look at the senses and appeal to the senses and shortcut logic, shortcut questioning, shortcut common sense, and just say, well, you're here. this is your experience. This has to be true. This has to be historical.
If you take a child there and the parents are telling them they're going to an actual museum, like you would take your child to the Museum of Natural History, then they're going to believe it, right? So you really are perpetuating a generation of science illiterate people.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. I always thought, like in Mormon belief, is that when the flood came, dinosaurs were wiped out. Okay, but they never ever claimed.
Yeah, that was an asteroid, by the way. Not a flood.
Yeah, I understand, but I mean, they never claimed that Noah took dinosaurs on the ark. So where the fuck did the dinosaurs go then? If they were on the ark, that means that they were saved.
No, but that's the thing. They weren't saved. They died because they didn't make it on the ark.
Well, hang on. There's some creationists that claim that dinosaurs are still
on the ark. They were on the ark.
No. That claim they're still
here. Like pterosaurs and crap.
Yep. And that they're just shrunken. So like birds and stuff.
But what I really think that they should have done with that Noah's Ark, to try to give it legitimacy, is to put it on hydraulic lifts so that the boat tosses and turns, and there's actually water pumped onto it so that you can experience what the ocean actually feels like. As a person coming from an island that deals with a lot of, at sea, and I've been at sea for a number of days and weeks, that boat wouldn't last a jig time, and that's a Newfoundland expression, 5 seconds in the North Atlantic, not alone in a worldwide flood. You're talking an astronomical amount of swelling that would happen.
Well, it's too long is like the major issue for wood, right? Because it becomes it's gonna twist and it's gonna crack and swell.
What about this too, David? They use modern techniques, building techniques, modern equipment.
Yeah, they did.
Build this damn thing, and it took them 5 years?
Yeah. Well, you see the thing, if you look at the site, you'll see the genie booms there, the man lifts, and they obviously used modern day saws and drills and stuff. And they're presenting it as evidence that Noah could have done it.
Yeah, I want to see them with a fucking Iron Age or a Bronze Age chisel, a copper chisel, and a mallet, and to do this. I really do.
Kidding.
Because they had no screws or joiners; it was all wooden pegs.
Yep. What do you think, Doc?
Honestly, I mean, obviously the fact that taxpayer money went into this is sort of ludicrous when you think about the separation of church and state. But then when you think about it, it could be sort of like when you go to a theme park and you're in a sort of a spaceship, or it can be like, because at this point, I consider the whole Bible, sort of all those stories, to be sort of like these fairy tales that can have a moral or not. Of course, when it's that instead of the science museum, it's horrible for our youth. We are cultivating anti-intellectualism and raising a generation of, fucking idiots.
They're presenting it as facts, though, right? So it's not just an amusement ride.
Yeah,
They're presenting it as facts.
And I mean, that's a hijacking of people's ability to think.
At an age where you can...
Yeah, where you're very influential and everything. So from that perspective, it's horrible. But I mean, look at where it was built. Didn't they say in the middle of Kentucky? I mean, that's the Midwest, isn't it?
Midwest?
South. Mid-South, yeah.
Isn't the South Midwest like two bad things together? Sorry.
Two negatives don't make it right.
Yeah, in this case, they don't. So, I mean, I'm definitely pro any kind of secular education. Yeah. You can be religious as long as it doesn't hijack your brain. And, when that process happens, even the most intelligent people, the most educated on paper people, can appear to be complete idiots when their religious stuff comes out. It's really just as a hijacking of people's ability to think.
I still want to see, I want to see live animals on that fucker, where they're actually shitting and trying to have enough food to last these things. And one door, because you only got, the original Ark had one fucking window and one door. You're not opening that door during the torrential downpour or the year you're on the boat, because that's the side of your boat gone. So I want to see literally a boat full of shit that they have to shovel out through one tiny window.
Yeah, but they're never going to get all the species that were alive at that point, 2 of them on the vessel. Like the insects alone would have taken.
Well, I mean, they say they take 2 of every unclean animal, but 7 of the clean animals. 7. So you're talking an astronomical number of fucking animals on the ark. And even if they took all babies, as they claim, after a year, they ain't babies anymore. Take a moose from 3 weeks old to 1 year. It's a massive fucking difference in the size of an animal.
So what did the lions eat?
Yeah. Grass?
Well, the dinosaurs. What the fuck did the dinosaurs
God temporarily rearranged their metabolism, their cell structure for that year. And then once the flood subsided, the cell structure and metabolism and diet built through years, billions of years, millions of years of evolution turned back to normal. It's just, but like, that's the thing. We know this stuff, but it's just so astounding that people don't think about this. They're so prepared to believe that this is the truth. And like, that's my main worry. It's like, how do we combat this? How do we undo the harm of this arc?
We need people that are willing to sink money into science, things like this, like, like just say the first, Apollo 13, like a replica Apollo 13 amusement park, like the Ark. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's what we need.
Dave, you have a point though. Like, look at what we have for educational purposes, and look at what these religious nuts are doing. And they're trying to keep what little faith that these people have as a group and pump it into something to manipulate a generation so that they can increase their numbers. And what are we focusing on? In intelligentsia, we're looking at museums that are really, they're not made for little kids. They're made for adult, to explain things to adult. Go to any museum and it's not really hard to see that it's made more for an adult than it is for a kid.
What if NASA engineered an amusement park, like a full-on amusement park, but made in a scientifically educational way? Like, that would be intense.
It'd probably have to be something, it's probably not NASA's mandate to do that, but like, we need nonprofits, and we need to excite the senses the same way that this thing is doing, right?
Yes.
And,
I agree.
And it's kind of a shame that we have to kind of, go with the low hanging fruit. Like, I don't know, personally, I believe that science is amazing and awe-inspiring in itself, but this arc thing is really going at the core of people's superstition and senses and stuff like that. So I don't know. I want to see some numbers too, like how many people are visiting. There's been predictions, like I think when they were playing out the cost of this thing, they were saying like, oh, it's going to, like, the visitors per year is scheduled to go down. Like, I want to see just how big of a problem this is in the education system. Do we have to have, as a secular community, have to have protests out there?
Well, one of the things that I think is we should know how many atheists are going to there just to see it as a gag. You know what I mean?
Going ironically.
Yeah. What also, another thing that really disturbs me is the fact that this whole story, Noah's flood, is a genocide story. You're talking about wiping out the entire contents of humanity, of all life on Earth, supposedly, if the story is to be taken literally as they say. This is not something to be celebrated. You're talking about the annihilation of humankind, almost, except for 8 people. And you're celebrating incest on top of that. How is this a moral tale to tell anybody?
Good point.
For sure it's not. And people tell it as bedtime stories and everything else. Yeah, fuck Ken Ham.
Yeah.
Basically. Fuck him right in his ark.
Into that window.
What possesses a human being to think that the drowning of infants is moral?
Jeebus.
But even if God did it, let's take it as true. How is that a moral action?
Because he tells you it's moral.
But how do we... Okay, here's my question. If he was evil, totally evil, how could we tell between a good God and an evil God?
You can't.
And go.
These are really, really valid arguments. People just don't seem to care. We care. We know we're on the other side of it. We've been unplugged from the matrix. But there's a whole bunch of people that aren't. I'm trying to grasp that. I'm trying to grasp with just blind belief.
Could you imagine the uproar if they were like, we're going to build fucking a replica of Mecca here in Kentucky? Could you imagine how crazy the Christian right would go?
We're going to use your tax dollars, and we're going to only allow people
of
Muslim faith to be employees. Oh my God.
They would go absolutely insane.
This was the Wayward Atheist podcast. Follow us on Spreaker, Spreaker.com/WaywardAtheists. You can email us at waywardatheistpodcast@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter @WaywardAtheists and on Facebook.com/WaywardAtheists. If you enjoy our content, feel free to leave us a review on iTunes and feel free to support us at patreon.com/waywardatheists.